welcome back. I'm Paul, and we've been waiting for this for about 6 weeks or so, but we finally got our Covington Engineering vibra. We're pretty excited to get started using it. It's our first time using a vibrating flat lap, and I've watched a ton of stuff and done as much research as I can, so I'm hoping we're fairly prepared, but this will be our first run on it. So when you get it, it comes like this. You got the base and the pan. I'm going to hold the camera for this part because I didn't know how well it would work trying to put it on my tripod. And then you also have your rubber bumper that comes with it. This just saves your rocks from chipping on the edge of your pan. I did set it up on the floor and ran it for overnight, just kind of learning some things about it before I started really running a batch on it. So I've already cleaned it all up and everything, and I noticed on my floor in my garage it has a little bit of a slope to get water to drain, so it's not quite level enough. So the first thing I did was we got it up on the bench, and we mounted it to the bench with some shims, and we've got it as level as I can get it. So hopefully it's level enough. It's really, really, really close. Pretty well perfect. So you got the pan and the base, and then it also came with the polishing pad. This is a 10-inch vibra lap. They have a 12 and a 16 also. So it came with the polishing pad, and then also you have some instructions that come with it. And there's a lot of good information in there. I've already read through it a couple of times, and I've learned some things. So it's all mounted to the bench, and I've got it plugged in, and this is what it looks like running. It's surprisingly quiet. I was pretty impressed with how quiet it was. It's a little bit louder when you get stuff on it, but for the most part, it's a lot quieter than I thought it was going to be. So the next step, we've got some rocks over here that we're going to get ready to go onto the vibra lap. So I'll walk through the process of what I've learned and what I plan on trying on the first batch to see how it turns out. So we'll be back in a sec. All right, so these are the first rocks that we're going to attempt to polish on the vibra lap. And like I said, I did mess around with it the other day just to get a feel for what I had going on and what steps I needed to take and all that stuff. So I've already ran these ones on coarse grit for overnight. So they ran, I don't know, 12, 13 hours, something like that. I wasn't planning on them being done or anything. I just wanted to run it and see the process and see what to expect. So one of the things that Covington recommends for a new user of this machine is to color the entire face of the polish, or the face of the piece you want to polish, with a black marker. And as you can see, I did that on these pieces. These are 2 thunder eggs, or it's a thunder egg cut in half, and then I have 3 pieces of Brazilian agate. Those are going to be the first pieces that we're going to work on. And you can see that most of this is all sanded down as smooth as it's going to get with the coarse grit, but you can see where the saw mark was. And you can still see that there's black marker there because it still would be a high spot or a low spot, whichever way you want to look at it, whichever way it's flipped. So you can see with the black marker still on there that it needs more time. And then you can also see on this one that it's got some spot through here where I cut these on a small saw. I've got a larger saw now, but when I cut these on my smaller saw, I had to cut from the bottom and then cut it again, and it didn't line up exactly perfect. So that's why I have that line on that one, and that's why the line's on this one also. It's from cutting it twice. And you can see that this one is mostly done. All of this is really good, except for this spot here. But I'll show you, and the thunder eggs both actually got all the marker off of it, but I will show you exactly what I did for the first time. So I just basically, exactly, it's as easy as it sounds. You just take your black marker, and they recommend doing this on every stage except polish. I just try to be careful around the edges so that way you don't get, because you're not going to do anything with these edges. They're going to stay natural. Well, at least that's my plan. So I don't want to get any black marker on that, because I guess you could get it off with some paint thinner or something, but I just colored the black all the way around the edges. I've seen videos where they say just to put some lines on it, but according to the Covington directions, when you're new, I should probably get a larger black marker, and I will, but for right now, this is all I have, but it works. They said just black out the entire thing. So we'll black the entire thing out. And that's basically what I did the first time I put them on too. They were just blacked out just like that. So now, if you have any if you see any flaws in the face or any high spots or low spots, it's good to get marker on those so you know when those spots are good. So we have that one all blacked out, and I'll go ahead and I'll do all of these before we put them on the flat lap. But for now, we're just going to do one, and then I'll do all the rest of them the same. So now that that's all blacked out, we'll know exactly when the face is completely flat. So one of the next things that they talk about in the instructions is they say if you have a rock that is 2 inches across, that you need to have 2 pounds of weight pushing the rock onto the table, so you have enough friction between your table and your rock. It makes them move right, and it makes the grinding action work correctly and all that. So if you have like a 4-inch rock, they say it needs to be 4 pounds. So obviously with these slabs, this little rock is probably, it's about 2 inches here and probably about 3 inches there. So it would need somewhere around 2 to 3 pounds of weight on it. And I don't have, I'm going to get some lead, because lead's one of the heavier metals you can use, and also the water shouldn't affect it too much. But I've got these chunks of stainless steel, and they're pretty heavy. I haven't put it on a scale, but they're pretty well about the right size to go on there. And they're going to add a lot of weight, and it did help adding the weight on it, because I ran them for just a little while, just the weight of the slab, and it didn't really do a whole lot. And then I put the weights on, and it ran for another 5 or 6 hours, and it did a lot of improvements on these when I had the weight on there. So one thing they say you can use is dop wax to attach your weights to the back, because you want something that's going to kind of be able to get the weight off fairly easy. Another thing that I've seen is double-sided tape, and I don't have dop wax, so the route that I'm going to go is the double-sided tape. So I just got a regular roll, and we'll see how it holds on. One of the ones I did the other day ran for about 5 or 6 hours with the double-sided tape, and it was perfectly fine, and it was stuck on there really well when I went to take it off. So we're just going to go the double-sided tape route. So I'll just take my double-sided tape and kind of mark out about how long the rock is. Out here, we'll cut a piece off. Get it stuck down on our rock, good. All the faces of the rock are all nice and clean. I've got all the grit off there. I guess that's a little big, but we can always trim it. And if it hangs off a little bit, geez, bump my camera. We can always trim it if we need to. Or, I mean, we can always, yeah, trim it. I think that's what I was trying to say. I lost my train of thought when I knocked my camera over. So, we got the tape roughly shaped on there. Take the backer off. And try to center this as best you can. And we'll go like that. And I might put this on a scale just to see how much it does weigh, to see how close I really am. But I'll probably use these stainless steel plates, and I'll start putting some lead weights, like a sticky backed lead weights on the back of this, just to add more weight to it. Because I'm assuming you could probably get to the point where you have too much weight, but the more the better for your grinding action. So there we have it. We've got the face all blackened out, and we've got the double-sided tape, and it's stuck on there real good. You just don't want it falling off when you're tumble process. So that's the process I'll go on these two. And on these ones, I don't really have a method to put any weight on the back yet. So for right now, I've got some, I'll show you when we get it set up on the tumbler, but I've got PVC pipes that you put the rocks inside the PVC pipe, and that keeps them from bumping on each other and chipping your edges up and all that stuff. So I've got some fairly large washers that I've been putting on the back of it while it's in the PVC pipe, and that puts a little bit more weight on it. It's not enough, I'm sure, but I am still dreaming up an idea that might work pretty good on that. So I will go ahead and get the faces on all these painted black again, and get the stainless steel weights taped on the back of them, and we'll get set up on the vibra lap, and we'll get some grit in it and some water, and I've got a dripper that we're going to get set up on it and get it rolling here, and it'll be in no time for you guys. All right, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to get a good view of this and film it, but this is going to be my starting point, and we'll see how it works out. So we got everything over here set up. We've got all of the faces painted black, and we've got all the weights taped on the back. So those are all ready to go. And I have the grit and the water, and we also have our PVC. We're going to use these PVCs to place them on there, and that'll keep all the rocks from banging against each other and chipping all the edges up. And then I also have a dripper set up here that it's the first time I'm using it, so we'll see how it works out. So Covington says their directions are fairly generic because they have a 10, a 12, and a 16 inch, and their directions say on the grit to run 2 to 3 tablespoons and around 2/3 of a cup of water, but it says more or less grit and water depending on the size of your flat lab. So it doesn't necessarily just say on a 10 inch use this and a 12 inch use this. So I'm going to start out with 2 tablespoons of grit. We're going to run coarse grit. I'm running 4670 right now because that's what I have. I may get something a little less coarse, like I may get like an 80 grit or somewhere in that ballpark, but we'll see how it works out, because we're going to run, I plan on running the coarse grit, the 4670, and then we'll run the medium grit, which is like 180, 220, or 120, 220, whatever it is, and then we'll run 500 grit, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go straight to polish after that or run my 1000 grit. So we will make that call later after we get a little more experience and see how things are looking. So I've got the table. The table has the set screw here, and you just loosen that and you push the table back and it comes off. So there's ears here slide on the table. So you just tighten your locking screw, or whatever you would call it. You get that nice and snug so your pan is tight on your base, and then you just take your 2 tablespoons and spread it out on your pan. The rubber bumper's already in there. And that said 2 to 3, and that's not even all of my 2 tablespoons, and I think I'm going to call that good, because that seems like a lot. But I may learn more in the future. And we'll put some water on. And I can always add more grit or more water at any point during the process. I have a good idea of what the slurry is supposed to look like from tumbling. So we'll turn that on and see what it does. All right. So we're getting a nice little movement. So we'll go ahead and get our stuff on there. I'm going to put the PVC on first, and I put the larger one. It's going to get loud here, so I probably won't talk too much. We'll just get it all loaded on there in the PVC pipes. These are the washers that I have to weight down the Thunder eggs. They're not a lot of weight, but they gotta help. They kind of rattle, ding a little bit. So one of the things in the book says that you should hear a scratching sound, and I don't know how well that comes over on the camera, but it has a very good scratching sound with that fresh grit. And I think the water is probably okay. It might be a little bit strong on the water, so I'll just dump a little bit more of this grit in. And I've got a dripper set up, and I plan on putting the hose right in that PVC like that. I did it on the ground like that. So it'll spin around and around, but my hose should stay dripping water on the table. And right now, it's set up to where that hose drips like a drip every 10 or 12 seconds. So we'll see how well of a job that does at keeping it wet, or if I have to open it up more, I'll let you know. So we'll let that go for, it'll probably go for about 6 to 8 hours before I check it again, and then if it's looking good, we'll cut back in on a video there. Alright, they've been going for about 9 hours, and I was going to check them. I checked one of them already to see what the black marker looks like. And you can see that I've got just a little bit of black marker left on that one, so it needs some more time. And I don't think that these times are going to be accurate for if you had a good cut with a saw, because my saw was a small saw, like I said. And I'm feeling the effects of having a bad cut by taking longer on coarse grit. You can see that that one's got a little bit of paint left in the middle, or a little bit of black marker. And this one, the Thunder Eggs are probably good, because they were good the other day. This one actually looks, it might be just a little bit dark on the top there. You can see right here. That's where the bad spot was. And it looks really good. It looks pretty close. I guess when I get it in light, I can still see some saw marks. So there is some black there. So that one needs some more time too. So one thing I said earlier was that they say you'll hear a scratchy sound when your grit is good. And you can feel it, that the grit is pretty well, there might be just a little bit left, but it's pretty well wore out. Right now I think it's settled into the cracks. When it was running, I could feel some grit. So I'm going to start it again, and I'll probably let it go overnight, and if it needs more time after that, which I'm sure it'll be good, I'll take it out, wash it, and start stage 1 again, because I don't know how long you want to just keep adding grit and water to the pan on stage 1. But I'm going to start it back up, and I will add some more grit, and hopefully you can hear the way that it sounds, and then as I add the new grit, you'll be able to hear all that sound that they're talking about, that scratchy sound. So gotta try to find it. I know it definitely got louder in person, and you can hear that there's a scratchy sound there now that the grit's not wore out. So it's definitely going to help. So I'm going to let those go, and I got a couple of hours that I can look at it again, otherwise it's going to have to go overnight. But I'll see what happens. Well, they went overnight, and I set my dripper up, and apparently it was dripping too much, because this is the mess that I woke up to. So now it's time to start cleaning things up. But while we're here, we might as well pull I haven't even looked at them yet. We'll see what they look like, see if all the black marker's gone. Hopefully. All right. I think that all the marker is gone. There are some like lines in the quartz there in the middle that must have some slurry in it. Hopefully that will come out with the later stages, or hopefully I can scrub it out of there. But that one looks really nice. That one's already on course. So let's check the other ones. I hope they're all done. They've gone, like I say, overnight. And I figured that they would be done, but that one looks good too. It again has, the quartz part has a little bit of, it almost had just kind of like a couple spots where it wasn't completely filled, almost like a little crystal pocket there that got some grit in it. But I'll have to try to get that scrubbed out. So that one looks good. And we'll check this last one. This one was the closest one to being done earlier, so I'm sure it's probably done. And it looks like all the marker is gone. So there we are. We've got those three. And the Thunder Eggs, the other day, they had already rubbed the black marker off. So I'm assuming, I just did them again just to have the, they say to have the plate loaded at least like halfway or something like that. So I just ran them again just to make sure that I had enough stuff on the plate, on the pan. So those are all done. So, well, they're done with coarse grit, I should say. So now I'm going to clean everything up here because I've kind of got a mess. But on these Brazilian agates, I actually plan on polishing both sides. So my next step on these, I don't think I want to polish one side all the way done and then flip it over and start on the other side. So I think I'm going to polish, because I've already got to pull the tape off and clean them to get all the grit out of there. I don't want to transfer grit to the next stage. So my plan is now I'm going to tape the weight on this side and do coarse grit on the back. So I'm going to do coarse and then flip them and do coarse and then do medium and then flip them and then do medium and then pre-polish and then flip them and do pre-polish and then polish and polish. So that's my plan, because on these ones I want to do both sides because I think it'll look nicer if I have both sides. In the future I may just run the coarse grit on the back side so it doesn't have all the saw marks and it looks finished, and then just polish the side you're going to see. But on these ones I just want to polish both sides just because I want to try it. The Thunder Egg, obviously, we're just going to polish the cut face because the back is just all natural. So I have a couple more Thunder Eggs that I will throw in those pieces of PVC that I haven't even run yet, because these two will be ready to go to medium, and then I'll have a couple more ready for medium. But my next step, I'm going to clean this all up and get these set up on the back side to run coarse grit on the back side. So that's what we'll do next. All right, we got everything all cleaned up. And like I was saying before with those Brazilian agates, I'm going to polish both sides. So the side that we just ran coarse grit I have on the top, and now we have the bottom side that we're going to clean up. And like I say, my times on this run are going to be a little extended due to the fact that they got bad cuts from a small saw. You can see the line on there from the saw. So it's probably, the last batch had bad, or the other side had bad cuts, and I want to say it took somewhere around the 20-hour mark to get the black marker completely gone. So we'll see what this side does, and next ones we run, I hope, are things I've cut on my bigger saw, so hopefully we don't have such bad saw marks. So I've got all my weights taped on. I've got the sides that I'm going to work on blacked out. We've got the pan all cleaned up, and I'm hoping I have my dripper set a little bit better. It's dripping about every 16 seconds or so, I think. So hopefully it doesn't put too much, but I'll be able to watch it, monitor it a little bit more this time than last time. I pretty well put it on and was away from it. So I'm running the 4670 grit, and I've got 2 tablespoons in there. I'll just use it all. And we've got some water. I cleaned everything pretty good, but it wasn't a super great clean because I was just going to run coarse grit in it again. But everything should be plenty clean anyways. It's probably clean enough to go to the next stage, but all right. Shoot, the 2 thunder eggs I was going to do won't fit in the PVC pipes I had. The other two we already did are done with coarse grit, so I was going to try to do two different ones. But I guess that's all we'll put on the table for this run. That should be enough. So I'll let it go. I'll try to keep track how many hours it ran to get it going, but I'll be back after it's all cleaned up and we'll get these going to medium stage. Alright, so on the second side of those Brazilian agates, I had a little bit of delay in my coarse grit, and I had to stop it and re-clean it out and do all that, get it going again, because I had to be away from it for a couple days. But in the process, I've got some more weight. I put some lead tire weights on the back of my stainless steel because I weighed them and they're not near heavy enough. Even the heaviest one isn't even a pound, and it says that if it's a 2-inch rock, it's supposed to be 2 pounds. So I've got to come up with something with some more weight. But for right now, that's what we've got. And then I've also learned that when I was doing the washers on the back of these thunder eggs, it kind of chipped up the back just a little bit. So I'm not going to use the washers. I did some without washers on it, and it seemed to work okay. So we're going to do no washers on those, and we've got extra tire weights on these. We've got both sides of the Brazilian agates ran through coarse grit. The one was about 20 hours, and the other side, I don't know, I think it was closer to 25 hours because it seemed like it went forever. But we're all ready to go. I've got them all painted up black. We're ready to go to medium grit. So first thing we'll do is, I think I've got something figured out with the dripper too, so hopefully our medium grit goes better than our coarse grit did, but we're learning. It's a learning stage here on our first run. So I'm going to do about 2 tablespoons like I did with the coarse grit. That should be about enough for now. Another thing I want to say on the coarse grit, I forgot to say that I started with 2 tablespoons of the coarse grit, and then about 6 or 7 hours in, I checked it, and I ended up adding another tablespoon of grit after that had wore down a little bit, because, like I say, these had rough saw cuts, so they took a lot more time than what they should have if they would have nice saw cuts. But we're ready to go to medium, so we'll see how this goes. From here on out, it should be normal times, because now that I've got them flat and the saw cuts are all cleaned up, the rest of the stages should go just like they would on any other rock. So hopefully the process speeds up for us now. Got some water, switch. That's annoying. There we go. I think we need a little more water. And we'll get these on there. If I remember right, the directions said to run like 6 to 8 hours on the medium grit, but I will double check the directions they gave and we'll go off of that. And we'll be back after they've got all the marker off of that side, and we'll flip to the other side on the Brazilian agates. Alright, after checking the directions, it said on the medium grit to go for like 2 to 3 hours, as long as you did a good enough job in the coarse grit that the medium grit should only take 2 to 3 hours. And I put them on and went to bed. So if you have them on there longer, it doesn't hurt anything. But if you're in a hurry, I guess you'd want to check them after 2 or 3 hours. But mine were probably on for about like 7 hours. And all the marker was off. And then I ended up just leaving the slurry that was in the pan from doing the first side of these Brazilian agates. And I took them out and I rinsed them and flipped the weights onto the other side and did the marker and put them back in with another tablespoon of the medium grit. And then those ones ran for probably 4 or 5 hours and all the marker was gone. So we've cleaned everything up, and I just wanted to take a look at how everything was looking after medium grit, and everything looks really nice. You can see on the Brazilian agates in the quartz, there's some more porous almost in there, where there's a little bit of grit that's kind of in there. Nothing wants to focus because I got stuff in the background. I'll move this out of the way, and it should focus better. Hopefully. There we go. You can kind of see how it's got some bigger crystals in there, and I'm going to make sure to get all of that scrubbed really well before I go to polish. But right now I've scrubbed it really well, but there's still a bit in there. But they're looking really nice. That's that side, and this side's got a little bit in it too. You can kind of see the pan mark on it from it sitting in there, and I scrubbed on it, but it'll come off when we move to the next stage. I'll probably just, and when you do your final polish, you have a felt pad, so it won't leave anything like that on it. I'll get it wet so you can kind of see what it looks like wet, and that's what it's looking like wet. So they're looking real nice and flat. And here's the darker one, wet. You can see lots of cool stuff in that one. And there's a few cracks that were in it, but you're not going to be able to get rid of that. And this side has a little bit of it was a little bit hollow on the inside of it, and this is the end slice of where that was. So when I display this one or whatever, I'm sure that we'll put this side out. So we'll see how it goes. And then the Thunder eggs are looking really nice. I don't know how well the brown material on the Thunder eggs polishes, but we'll find out. So the agate in the middle looks really nice. There's not a whole lot going on this one, but it is what it is. So next step, I just want to give you a chance to see them before I had the weights taped on them and the surface that we're working on blacked out with the black marker. So we'll go ahead and get the weights taped back on the Brazilian agates, and we're going to take the black marker and do the faces of the Thunder eggs and the side that we're working on, and we're going to get them loaded on the pan and get them going on the 500 grit pre-polish. So that'll be coming up here in a sec. All right, we've got everything cleaned up, and we've got all the faces blacked out, and we've got our weights taped on the back. So we should be ready to go. We're moving on. In the directions, it says to run a stage of 400 and a stage of 600. And I have what I have marked as 500. I don't have the original packaging, so I don't know if it's 4 or 6. But it says if your rocks don't polish up to add a step of 1,000. So I plan on running this, whether it's 4 or 6 or 5. I'm not 100% sure. I might have to order the right exact ones and mark them better, but I have it marked at 500 pre-polish for my tumbler. So we're just going to run, I'm going to call it 500, and then after this we'll do a stage of 1,000 before we go to polish. So we're going to get it going on the 500. And I'm going to run 2 tablespoons. This is a half a tablespoon because all my tablespoons are all dirty and my other stages of grit, and I don't want to cross-contaminate. This one's clean. So that's a half. And maybe I'll try like 1.5 because it seems like the 2 is plenty. There's a half. And 1. And 1.5. I'll probably add, I'm going to do the Thunder eggs, I'm just doing one side, so I just let them run. But on the Brazilian agates, I'll run it. The directions said on the medium, I thought it said 2 to 3 hours, but it says 1 to 2 hours. Basically, you just have to go until your black marker is off. So I'm going to run it for a few hours, and I'll check it. And if the marker's gone, I'm just going to shut it off, and I'll pull the Brazilian agates and clean them and take the weights off and flip it to the other side. And I'll probably add some more grit when I flip to the other side, like another half a teaspoon or something, and get the other side to where the black marker's off. So we'll get some water in here and get it running. Basically in the directions, it doesn't give a whole lot on time other than it says a well-monitored machine should be able to do it in 1 to 2 hours. And the grit is pretty generic as well. So I'll get a better idea of the time after I do a few runs here, but most of the time I'm not back to it within an hour or two. It goes a little longer than that, but like I say, longer doesn't hurt anything. All right. Well, I may end up putting a little more grit in there. I'm only at 1.5 tablespoons, and it looks like I might have put a little too much water in. But you can add some grit to kind of dry it up. All right. We'll let that go until the marker's off of this side, and I'll pull the Brazilian agates and clean them and flip the weights and get them back in there. And when we come back, I'll have both sides done on the 500 grit, and we're ready to, cleaned up and ready to go to 1,000. All right, we got the 500 grit silicon carbide done on both sides, and now they're all cleaned up, and I blacked out the surfaces we're working on, and we're ready to get them going on the 1,000 grit. On the 500 grit stage, it took about, I'd say about 2 hours a side, so it actually went pretty quick. So I'm hoping that, and that was when I ran a tablespoon and a half, and I ran one side, and then when I was on the Thunder eggs, I don't flip them, obviously, they just stay on there, but the Botswana, or the Brazilian agates, I pull them off, clean them, flip them, and then when I put those back on for the other side, I usually added like another half a tablespoon, so it had a little bit of fresh with the slurry that was already in there, and they took a little bit longer on that side, right about the 2 hour mark. So we're going to do the 1,000 grit, and we're going to do a tablespoon and a half now, and when all the markers off of this side, I'll pull the Brazilian agates and clean them and flip the weights onto the other side and get the face blackened out with the marker and put them back on, and hopefully about 2 hours, and that'll be done, and then we'll be able to move over to polish. So we'll get the tablespoon and a half 1,000 grit silicon carbide on the pan. Now we're getting to the really fine like dust with this grit. I might even be able to get by with just a tablespoon right now, but we'll see what it looks like. It doesn't give super great directions on amounts of grit for the size of the machine, but all the other ones I did about 2, and it seemed to be pretty good. It takes a certain amount, you know, just to fill the pan up. That's 1 tablespoon, because this scoop is a half a tablespoon. And there's a tablespoon and a half. So we'll run with that. We'll get a little water in there. I think I had a little bit too much water when I started on my 500. So I'll put a little less in here, and we'll get it going, and if I have to add some more later, we'll add some. Looks like this pile. Oh, there we go. All right, we'll get our rocks on there, and we'll let them go until the black marker's off. And like I said, I'll flip these and do those, so when we come back, they'll be done with the 1,000 grit, and I'll let you know how long it took, and we'll get it all cleaned up and ready to go to polish. These finer grits, it's a lot quieter, not near as much abrasion and sanding. Oh, I put the wrong one inside there. That one goes in there, and this one goes here. Alright, we'll let that go till the black marker's all gone, and flip into the other side of the Brazilian agates, and we'll be back to go to polish. Alright, so in 1,000 grit, each one took a couple of hours. It didn't take long. So we're ready to go to polish for our first time, and I've got the pan all cleaned up real well, and we have our felt pad, so we'll get that put in. And then I went ahead and got a new bumper. I'm sure you can order these online, and I may order some, but I just went to the local hardware store and I got a piece of clear tubing, because that's basically what it is, and got a smaller piece that'll fit inside. Because when you run the silicon carbide in the coarser grits, it gets embedded in there, and you don't want to cross any silicon carbide over to your polish stage. So I just got new bumpers, and then also I've been using PVCs to keep the pieces from bumping into each other and chipping them. So I got brand new ones for the polish stage, and everything's all cleaned up. So we got our felt pad in there, we've got our new bumper, and we're going to load it up with the polish. And from what I've been reading, it says it'll start polishing from the outside in, because the outside of the rock will move more. The middle of the rock doesn't move near as much because it's kind of rotates around the center. So it says it can be anywhere from 10 to 20 hours. So this is my first polish, so we'll see. We'll probably try to keep it. They said the thicker the paste you keep your polish slurry, essentially, the faster it'll go. The more water you have, it'll kind of slow it down. So we're going to kind of almost try to keep it on the dry side, but you got to have enough moisture in there to keep it moving. And I haven't even seen what it'll look like. So we will get our polish on there and get our rocks on and get it rolling and see what it looks like. All the other stages I did about a tablespoon and a half to 2 tablespoons, but they say that this felt pad needs to get loaded up on the first polish. So we'll see what happens here. I'll know more after we get it going, and maybe I'll poke in after it's been going for a few hours if I need to add more grit or more polish. Or according to the chart that they sent, you can use cerium oxide or aluminum oxide, and I think they lean towards cerium, and I do have some, but I've had better luck with the aluminum oxide, and the materials that I'm polishing were on the chart showing that you could use cerium or aluminum oxide. So I'm going to try my aluminum oxide because I've had better luck with that all around in my tumblers. So maybe the flat lap will be a different world. So we're just going to squirt a little water on there. I'm sure it'll take a bit to get that felt pad soaked up. Might as well get it going. Oh, there we go. I didn't know the pad would spin. Maybe it's not supposed to. Let's try this. I'm not sure if that pad's supposed to spin. Maybe my bumper's a little bit too small. Maybe if I squeeze it out like that, that'll hold it down. There we go. Well, we'll go ahead and get some pieces put on there and see what it looks like. It says something about having a 1/4 inch of slurry pushing up on your leading edge of your material, but my material on this run is only about a 1/4 inch thick, so that might be tough. Well, we'll let that go for a while, and after I know something, maybe I'll poke back in and we'll see what it's looking like. Alright, so it's been about an hour, and I'm not getting any, like, froth too much, but I must have put probably 3 to 4, maybe even 5 tablespoons of the polish in there to get it to the point where it looks like I've got the pad loaded up for the very first run. And everything's moving real nice. I had to rearrange my thing, but I've been checking this one just a little bit. It doesn't really have much. I might have too much water. I'm going to let it dry up. I have my dripper shut off right now, but if I rinse that off and dry it, that is dry. So you can see that it's taken a polish. That's only after about an hour. So in the directions of the Covington, it said it can take 10 to 20 hours, and that's after 1 hour, and that's actually looking pretty decent. This is quartz in the middle of this, and it had imperfections in it, so it's got slurry that's trapped in there from the other stages that I can't get out. I've scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, and I can't get it. So I knew these weren't going to be perfect, but they're my first run. But an hour in, and we're getting a pretty good shine on there. I'm actually pretty happy with the way that that's looking after an hour. So I'll probably let them go for another 2 or 3, and then check them all, and then maybe flip these Brazilian agates, and we'll run with it from there. So I just figured I'd check in and let you know how it's going. Oh, I think I need to put that over here. You got to arrange things on this tray right, or it gets real jerky like that. So, all right, we'll be back in a little while probably when we switch them over. We'll see how long this side takes. All right, we've been going about 3 hours, and I've been checking them a couple of times, and they look really nice. We'll take a look at these. The Brazilian agates on this side. The Thunder eggs don't have as much weight on them, so they're taking a little bit longer, but I don't have to flip those. So there's one of these all dried off. Here, got a little bit more in there. You can see how nice that looks. It's got a mirror shine to it. It does have the imperfections in the middle of the rock where the slurry is, and I can't get it out. I'm thinking about trying like an ultrasonic cleaner or something like that, but we'll see what happens. But there, you can see it's got a nice mirror shine. It looks really good. And all of the Brazilian agates look like that. So they've been on there for 3 hours to get that. So I'm going to pull them quick, and I'll flip the Brazilian agates over to the other side and get the weights taped onto the back side. And right now I've got the worst side of the Brazilian agates down. So when I flip them and I polish the other side, that's the side that's nicer of the two sides, and I won't have to put the weight or anything like that on it. So we're going to go ahead and get the weights on the other side and put them back in, and we'll check back in. I'm thinking it'll probably take about 3 hours or so. Well, after I flipped the Brazilian agates, we let the other side run for about 3.5 or 4 hours, and the two Thunder eggs ran the whole time that both the sides of the Brazilian agates were running. So they were somewhere around the 7.5 to 8 hour mark, and everything turned out pretty good. This is our first attempt at using the flat lap, and we learned a lot of things. There was a lot of little things that you kind of don't learn until you start doing it, but I'm going to do my best to try to help you out if you're thinking about getting into doing some polishing on a vibratory flat lap. But we're going to move the camera over here so we can get a better look at some of these. It'll focus better over here. So these Brazilian agates, and there's a little bit of lines on there from wiping it off. They're all dry. You can see the quartz in the middle has like cracks, not cracks, but like kind of voids in it, and the slurry got in there in the beginning stages, and I cleaned and cleaned and cleaned, and I was unable to get that out of there. So it might not be the best idea to polish a rock like this on the flat lap that you can't get that slurry out of. You can see that it polished really nice. I mean, they look great. This is the better side. I don't know, this side turned out pretty as well as pretty good as well. There's the light. You can just see there's little bitty voids in that quartz, and there's more over here too, but I just wanted to try it. All the agate part is really, really nice. I did have it dry out on me one time. That's one of the suggestions I'm going to make, is that if you can't be around it and you're going to let it run while you're away or sleeping or at work or whatever, you need to make sure that you're watering your dripping system or whatever you're using to put water in it. I feel like it's better to make it a little bit wetter than dry, because I actually had it dry out on me a couple of times, and I had to actually move back a stage on a couple of these. I didn't exactly show all of that, but I had to move them back to 220 grit at one point in time and redo some things, and then step them back up to where I was. So I had some issues with that. Now, most of it was self-inflicted because the pan dried out on me when I was away, and we had issues with that. So that could be part of the reason that I've got slurry stuck in these. But here, we'll look at another one. And then another thing that I had issues with is when the pan dried out on me, I put some water in it and let it run a little bit, but some of the grit and everything settled into the grooves of the pan. And I was trying to clean it with like plastic bristle brushes, and the pan is aluminum, and I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, and I was having issues getting that grit out of there after it got hard on me. So I tried a brass brush, knowing that I don't want to use, obviously, a steel brush on aluminum. I thought the brass would be all right, and it cleaned it up really well, and the brass don't hurt the aluminum. But I believe if you look at this right here, by this finger, you see those swirls? I think that possibly a part of a aluminum or the brass brush, one of the bristles, got somehow left in the pan after I washed it and rinsed it out, because that was another thing with having to move them back a few stages. This is the bad side of this one. If I display it, I'll display it on this side because it looks nicer. So I didn't move everything back. I just tried to get what I could. But I ended up with some swirl marks on some of them that you can see, those little round swirls. I could put it back in and redo it and get them out, but I don't know if I will, or if I do, I'll do it some other time. But the Thunder eggs look pretty good. The rhyolite, which is the brown, from what I've read, the brown part is rhyolite. It didn't take as good as it shined. You can kind of see still a little bit of moisture on the front of that. You can see over in here, there's some of those swirls. So I don't know if it was a piece of this that broke off that was making those swirls, or if it was it was right after I tried cleaning the pan with the brass brush. So I'm assuming that it was self-inflicted. But I did have, like I said, the pan dried out on me a couple times, so I'm having a little bit of an issue getting all the grit off of the back of the rock. It's just on the edge of these, but I'm going to try a few different things. I've thought about I've heard of like an ultrasonic cleaner, and I don't know if that'll even touch this stuff or not, but. And then here's this one. This one is probably the best one. I mean, it looks like a mirror. And they're all pretty nice. But it doesn't, and it's got some nice bands in it down here. And you can see all the lines in it. This one has a spot where I was getting a little bit of a crack back there. That was just the way it was. And then as I cut this rock, as I was getting to the quartz, you could see that I just got on the edge of the quartz there, and it's got the voids in it like the other ones do on this Brazilian agate. And you can see some of those swirls back there. But it was one of those things where I knew that if I was going to display this one, I would display this side out. So I didn't take those sides back to... I ended up taking some of them back to 280 or the 220 grit, whatever it is, 180, 220. But this one's my favorite. It turned out really nice. And it's got, it's pure agate on this face of it. So it polished really nice. It didn't have any of the quartz. It didn't have any holes or anything like that. So as a whole, it was a pretty good learning experience. One thing I'll say is if you're thinking about getting a vibratory flat lap, it's definitely a lot more time and labor intensive than a tumbler. Because for the most part, a rotary tumbler, you put your stuff in it for a week, and I basically don't even look at mine for 7 days because I've never had an issue with lids popping off, I always check them out and make sure they're still rolling and everything. But with the flat lap, you're putting your eyes on it a lot, making sure your water's good. And most of the stages don't take that long, but if you have a cut that's not real great, when you start your coarse grit with a bad cut, on these ones, I ran them close to 20 or more hours trying to get all the saw marks and everything out of it from being cut with a small saw. So if you have a good saw and you're going to get into it, it's not that big of a deal, but I do find myself watching it a lot more, and you have to get your water system figured out. On the polish, I basically got the pad wet and it loaded with polish to where it looked like it was working, and I never had to add any water to it. But the pad actually absorbs the water, so it stays moist. But when you're doing the grit, it dries out a lot more, and I had issues with it drying out on me when I was away from it for a while. I don't know if I didn't have my dripper turned up. I've got my dripper figured out now to where it has been good for the last few stages, and I hopefully when I run here the next batch or we run on it on course, hopefully I've got the dripper figured out. But that was one of the bigger issues that I had. But other than that, I would say that it was a new experience, and it's a little bit more work than tumbling. And we're still in the beginning stages, so we're still going to learn a whole lot. But I think we've learned a lot on this. I think I'm going to try to do some bigger rocks rather than having these small slabs and have to put weight on it, because that'll be a little bit of a game changer also. So thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions or questions, I don't have a lot of answers yet because we're pretty new to it, but if you have any suggestions, I'm always willing to listen. I'm always willing to learn. So that's all we have for right now. Thanks for stopping. Thanks for looking.